Here on the Super Morning Show, and we told you earlier the Minister of Finance, Minister D. Samuel Tweah, would be our guest this morning on this Super Morning Show, and he's right here with us. You don't want to miss it. Everything about Liberia's economy. You will have the time to ask him questions, and he will tell you how we are doing. And I'm here. My name is Titi Gibro, doing this interview along with the publisher of the Front Page Africa newspaper, Rodney. Rodney, welcome to the Super Morning Show.
Good morning to you. Nice to be here.
Mr. Tweah, good morning and welcome to the Super Morning Show.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and good morning to the Liberian people.
And it's a pleasure talking to you and, having you, in our company to let the Liberian people know what exactly is happening when it comes to, financial matters in our country. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
How has it been? How have you been?
Well, it's been, these quite challenging times, but we have been up to working very hard for the country. It's been quite some time. The last time I was here was almost a year, and then so I thought that as Minister of Finance, it's always important. Minister of Finance should not be on the radio all the time, but every now and then it should appear to provide broader updates on the trends in the economy, the direction of the country in terms of policy measures, answer some technical questions, clarify misunderstandings, and so I think I thought it necessary that coming from a very successful annual meetings a week or two ago, and on the verge of an IMF supported program that I think I appear to provide information on what these mean for the country, and I wanted to have seasoned journalist to have a conversation with me on these programs. So, Rodney is here, an independent journalist. I'm fortunate that Legendary Randy fell ill; he couldn't be here today. So, look forward to a broad set of discussions. I don't come here with an exhaustive answer, so let me manage expectations from the beginning. I'm just one man. I don't have all of the answers for the country's problems or the information necessary. So I may not be able to, off my head or whatever, provide all the necessary. But I think the conversation will be rich enough to see where the country is going and what the president means for the people of this country in terms of the policies he's pursuing. So I hope it's going to be a good worthwhile 3 hours.
Great.
Yeah. Can we get started?
Sure.
Mr. Minister, let's get started with something that's on the mind of all Liberians.
Yeah.
The economy is in a free fall. Prices are rising. Consumers are complaining. The rates keep going higher. You've been in negotiations with IMF for some time now. I think we've reached a point where we're seeing some kind of dynamics in terms of the way forward.
Good, sure.
How would you describe the state of the Liberian economy in the wake of your talks to the IMF?
Well, the state of the Liberian economy can be described as challenging. The numbers are showing that we are challenging. And I think what we are trying to do with the program is to address the macro situation, because the macro situation has to be stable. Even when we talk about investment and all of that, macro stability sends a good signal for investment. So macro stability means that the government on the fiscal side is not contributing to inflation. So when government borrows or when government spends beyond its means, that adds to the inflation pressure. The inflation pressure we face today started, with large inflows of Liberian dollar into the economy beginning from 2017 April, and we've agreed with the fund that that large inflow at the time when US dollar was leaving the economy, we began to see that impact happening, February, March, April, immediately when the president took over. Unfortunately, the monetary policy framework that we had, which we've been running on, cannot, it's not adequate, because it meant that we will have to be using reserve to stabilize. Now, we could do that 5 years ago when our reserve was much stronger under the president's higher commodity prices. Today's environment, you can't do that because reserve is low. So you have to move to a framework where you start using interest rates. So, that's the framework that we're going to deploy now with the IMF program. So on the fiscal side, there's some things that we had to do, pass a credible budget. That means that the budget cannot be, we should spend what we have, or our budget should be close to our revenue. and that has been a problem. So anytime you run large deficits, then it's inflationary. In this program, which is a prior action, that you have a credible budget, transparent, credible, that box has been checked. That you also have wage reform. Technically, we've said that the government is one of the biggest thing that's happening now. So one of the reasons why a lot of people are working for the government is also because the opportunities in the private sector have not been there. So wage grew from 2009 from 100 million to 289 million by 2017, and then it went up to around 300. So we've brought the wage down to 297. And let me say a big thank you to all of the 74,000 Liberian workers who work for the government. They are the ones who are doing the heavy lifting. For some 4 million other Liberians who have no impact. So the way the wage works, when the government pays salary, they have 74,000 workers. If each one of those workers have 10 persons that they support across on average, that's around 740,000 Liberians who benefit every time government pays. But the population is almost 4.7 million. So what these 74,000 people are doing is to say, look, let's think about the other 4 million Liberians spread all over the country who have no impact when government pays. These are the people who deserve better school. These are the people who want better roads. These are the people who want, health care. And so at the end of the day, government will have to find that money to do so. But the way the budget has been looking, there's no way to find money. Sometimes you hear people talk about agriculture. There's no money with the way the budget looks. So you have to clean up, make the sacrifice. There's 74,000 people making the sacrifice through harmonization. And then the IMF said, this is a direction that you're going. You're sending a good signal. So we met our prior action. And then we've also agreed not to borrow from the central bank. On the central bank side also, the prior action is also the central bank budget. There have been some conversations about that. Technically, a central bank has to be well within limits, within the region. And so when we look at the numbers of the bank, given that the bank had run on deficit, the fund is requiring that, look, let the central bank be a normal central bank. And this is where we are working with them to adjust that situation so that we go into the program and then send a signal. I've been just from the IMF annual meetings, World Bank and the IMF. The signal out there is that, look, you guys are on the path of reform. You need to send a turnaround positive signal to the world. What the program does for the country is that it gives the world confidence. It gives the world an image that if Liberia can do these reforms, because these are difficult reforms that probably President Weah is one of the very few presidents is undertaking. It's just exemplary reform. The reason why we haven't done it is because it's hard. And so the president that does it and the people that stand behind the president to achieve this, when the good days of the country come, they will be the heroes. The workers, they will be the heroes.
But one issue that we're talking about harmonization and the wage bill.
Yeah.
One issue that's in the news and a lot of people are concerned about is the issue of the wage.
Good.
IMF wants you to cut the wage down. At the same time, this government, when it came in, they brought a lot of new employees. As a result, they put a strain on the economy. For those in the community, like the market women, the civil servants especially, they are feeling the pinch. I mean, they've seen their salaries come, some people making $1,000, now making $200. How much of an impact do you think this harmonization will have? Because a lot of people are feeling the pinch. A lot of people, like ordinary people, cannot send their kids to school, they cannot feed their families. And how do you convince them that this wage harmonization issue is something that will benefit in the long term?
Well, first, the first thing what the wage harmonization did was to bring some equity. Okay, so technically it provided more income for around almost 15,000 workers who were earning. I mean, think about an immigration person standing at the border and he's getting $45 US. I mean, think about a supplementary school teacher who's getting $45 US. Harmonization put money in the pockets of those people. How? Because the Liberians who are making higher, look, any Liberian who makes 3,000 above can spare something to a Liberian who's making $30 or $40. That is the logic. So it's like taking from those who are making more. It's a net gain. It's not a loss. It's almost like it's a left hand giving to the right hand, but it's still within the same soup. So the 14,000 people who got an increased income will then spend that. But it's just that the other people had to adjust downward. And then broad equity. We're not at the point where we want to be. But when you read the IMF, the EMPF document that is coming out, you will see that when people around the world read that the country's wage system has restored some equity within the population. Equity we talk about in terms of social and political inclusion, it's a good goal to achieve. So it's a hard thing anytime, whether you're making 100, you're making whatever, when your salary is cut, it's a pain. Let's face it, no president, no government wants to do this. But when you're in a situation where, for example, if you don't do that, then people don't have confidence. First of all, people say that the way you are paying your workers, we don't want our European or American tax dollars to be used that way. Why would you pay one driver 300 and another driver 1,500 who have the same rent? Why do you want to do that? So it shows you're not using our money, and this is how we used aid money in the past. So it gives partners confidence to bring in more grant support to the country, which is a good thing for all of us. So it's 74,000 persons again making the sacrifice. They're doing the heavy lifting here for the rest of the 4 million people, so that together we can have the rating that we want. And then people say Liberia is turning the economy. They're solving the problems they could not solve for a long time.
Yeah, but there are those who are not convinced. People are saying, for example, like if you have a home of 5, a husband, a wife, and 4 or 5 kids, you have to send them to school. Yeah. You have to feed them. You have to do a lot of stuff to make them happy. If you have a $1,000 paycheck coming in the family, and it's come down to $200.
Nope.
It puts a burden on a lot of families. That's the perception on social media.
Well, no, those salaries were cut at that level. The salary protected. Nobody making below 200 or 50 or more dollars were ever touched in this whole organization. So it's a rare. In fact, that was one of the things. People who making low salaries were protected. Teachers, health workers were protected. But at the end of the day, at some point, even at the higher levels where we're going now, like a medical doctor who's making 5,000, he can understand if he takes a little cut. I think here and there, some of the thing is the way the communication went and the glitches. Because you see, when when reform is ongoing, it can be difficult, especially reform around wage, which people can resist. So some of that led to the wrong data coming, people processing wrong. All of that, we're in the transition period. We've not landed yet, and so we've made some agreements with the Civil Service Workers Association, the teachers. And look, these adjustments will be happening, but we want the end of November to happen. But nobody. The wage was done in such a way that we protected people. Technically speaking, when you look at some of the ministries that did reform under the Free People's government, they were very high in salary. We are not able to bring them down to the other level because it just is not humanly possible. So they're still higher relative to the other. But we are proud that we're able to close the gap between those who were up and those who were low. And I think that's a painful. I don't like to talk about it because it's affecting, but I see it as people making sacrifice for the betterment of the country, in a tough time. And I think that's the message. That's the story that all of us must hear.
Okay, let's move away.
Before we move away from the harmonization, I hear you say Liberia is on the path to reform. What I want to know from you is the numbers you gave us. You said the wage bill, we had like 100, a million. We moved to 300 million. Now it dropped to 297 million. How is it going to help in this? How is it going to help us? Because from 100 to 300 million now, we just dropped 297. How is it going to help us as a country?
No, I mean, I was just giving you the history of how wage grew from 100 million every year to 300 million. So that means that more and more people are getting into the government payroll. That's the point I was making. And so when you look at like Sierra Leone and all the other countries that are compared to Liberia all the time, the economists take, and you have to do, this is the only way you compare countries, to take your wage and put it on top of the GDP. And in Liberia, it's been high. It's gone as high as 12% in Liberia in the past, right? So in Sierra Leone, it's like 6%. When you look in Ghana, when you look in all of our countries, so but why in Sierra Leone wage to GDP is 6%, but in Liberia it's still 11%. So you want to start moving it down, and the reason for that is that we are all challenged to provide opportunities in the private sector so that our people can see the private sector as a place to be, and that's where the direction is going when we get to talk a little bit about some of the things we want to do in agriculture. But at 297 is the wage. Through pension, the government is working to, for example, some of the reason why the bill is still large is because of pension. We have to pension people. The other part I didn't get to your question was, this government, sometimes I like to say, let's state the facts and get away from the politics. Because sometimes the politics get into the discussion and it confuses the common ordinary people when they are between political forces and then the information is missing. It is really true that wage was really high when the new government took over. the new president took a wage bill of 289 million. That's very high already. And then by the time he took over, the health pool fund that was paying some 2,000 health workers, for example, right, at a cost of around 11 to 12 million dollars. The development partners said, well, we don't have money again to pay these people in the new 2018 budget coming, so you have to put them on the payroll. And we absorb those people. So on top of 289, you're adding some 12 million. And of course, a new government would hire new people. The argument that the new government should never have hired anybody is an unfair argument to anybody listening to me right now throughout the country. To say President Weah should never hire one person, should have just left the government like that. That would be unfair to them. And that's what I mean when you politicize that. And the number of new hires in the government will probably, in central government, probably be between 4,000 or so. But when if the new government was standing on the wage bill of 150 million and hired and put 20 million there, we would be like Sierra Leone. We didn't have that opportunity. But we're now trying to fix it. So the goal is to keep wage at 297, bring it down by...
So we're going to bring it down further.
Yeah, well, if you took 10,000 people from on the pension, for example, yeah, maybe so we're working to see the people who pension. The reason why they're there is a handshake. So we're working to find a way to do that handshake thing with the World Bank, and so we clean up that. So imagine 10,000 people leaving. That brings the thing down to 64,000. And progressively preventing ghosts from getting there. The IAA, the GEC, all are involved so that we clean up. We're going to do an automated system. We're just running things the way the best countries in the world are running now. This is how the path we want to get on the fiscal, on the monetary side. And these things give foreigners and people who want to bring money confidence when they look at the numbers. Look, countries are judged by reports. Nobody comes here to talk to the Minister of Finance to find out about Liberia. They just put up Liberia report and say wage to GDP, Liberia versus Sierra Leone, inflation, Liberia versus Sierra Leone. They just run all the numbers. And they say, but I think I won't go to Sierra Leone, I want to go to Rwanda. I think the numbers in Liberia don't look good. With this program, our numbers are going to look good, and then we can have the international confidence to try.
Before we move to something else, Rodney, please, I want you to speak to this whole 6%, reduction, and then I also want you to speak to something the Ministry of Finance had a release a few days ago, and in that release, you talked about all of those working with the government and not having the ID card. I want you to speak to that. When does that start? Those who don't have the national identification card, what happens to them after December?
Okay, so 6% just means that the logic behind what 6% happened was that when we submitted the budget on the 297 number. And when you put the 297 wage number to GDP, it's like 9.1 or so percent, and then it looks, the economic model for changing the whole fiscal program looks good. When we went to budget negotiations, obviously not everybody was on that. Some of the controllers from the entities didn't submit the right data. Places like Ministry of Justice, the Bureau of Corrections, names were left out. But because this thing we had to go to the board of the IMF. In fact, we were told we were going to go to IMF board in August. We started this process in April, and it was tight. So it started happening in a way that was moving fast. And so at the end of the day, we submitted 297, and that's the number that makes Liberia to pass in terms of when you run everything. But when we started to do the rollbacks and the readjustments, that number went back to what? 314 million. And with 314 million, you break the ceiling. So it's like, how do you move from 314 now to 297? This is where the national legislature passed the Standardization Act and mandated that we move from 314 to 297 million, and so that would mean everybody would take some. So it's not a double, it's not a new cut. It's just a. So in other words, when we started in April, we will still arrive at this point had no error being made. So it's not a separate exercise. It's just the same harmonization to take everybody to 290. We're protecting in that process. And the other day we had a meeting with all of the controllers across the country. We had civil service union, the teachers are there, and we asked the question, look, think about a nurse in River G, all the way there. I mean, these people are already underpaid. It would be unfair, and the legislature thought it would be unfair to subject them to everybody to the same 6%. So some of these people are being exempted. Because they've been exempted, that means some of us who make higher will have to bear a higher burden. And so the actual number we're talking about here to stabilize this whole thing is around 8.4 or so percent with the possible exemptions. This is the communication that we want to get out there.
Say what?
8.4%. So this means that instead of 6, it's 8 because we're exempting people in health, in education, and things
When
like
are you
that.
going to perfect that?
We say by November ending, we're working by November ending, December ending, everybody will have a stable pay. And people will then see that number throughout in the new year that is coming. So we're using this period to transition the harmonized wage bill so that it is stable, and we're working with people to regularize it, and we can have that conversation also as part of the program.
Mr. Minister, all these cuts you're talking about, there are concerns that although the government is cutting salaries almost across the board, they're not doing much to cut costs in terms of the higher ups. For example, the president's travel, the president's construction of houses and stuff, since he became president. Those are things people are looking at saying, well, why is the government not cutting down those costs and focusing only on the middle class?
Well, one of the gains we made here is to say, right now, the way the president has said, we will stop capital projects. We're going to regularize the government salary. So it is the case that we're cutting all across government, and not just only the harmonized. Goods and services have been rationed to an extent that only the essential things we're going to do, hospitals and stuff. So, for example, the MPA budget was 7 million, and when we push in the MPA to bring more to freeze capital spending. So the reality is that when you look at the president's, when you look at the president's budget today in today's Liberia, and compare it to any time, the argument will be clear that this president has significantly less resources on the Ministry of State. You can run that number anytime. It's available to the public. Go back and take 2015 budget, a Ministry of State budget, fiscal outturn, and compare it to the fiscal outturn. I think those things, I've seen some of them on people have shown them to me. It's there. This president faces more expenditure. He cannot get most of the things that the president should deserve because of the tight situation. So the tight situation is everything all around. One of the things we're agreeing with the fund on is that now we're sending fiscal data all the way. Everything the government buys, tissue paper, we send that information to the IMF. We have nothing to hide. With full transparency on the monetary side, all of the data is also going to the IMF.
So the wage bill, is it 298 or 310? Because
It's 297.
Because some people say it's 310.
No, it's 297. It's actually 297 is what the wage bill is.
That's the final.
That's the final number. Now, yeah, I may say this. Look, when the year ends, because of some of these adjustments, even the fund will have to agree that you may not get the 297. The fund will have to. We could see 303 because of the way we started the process.
Right.
But the key thing is that the 297 is a number that we're locking in for the future, the medium term. So that's it. But we may be off because of all of these adjustment periods, and I think the fund will be open to that.
Okay, let's go to the issue that's been on the weekend more dominant, is the issue of the Millennium Challenge corporation accounts.
Mm-hmm.
They came out with a scorecard for 2020.
That's correct.
And they announced Liberia didn't do too well. And the GO that responded through MICAD, through a press release yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and they seem to be more concerned about the perception about public corruption.
Mm-hmm.
What is being done to reduce that high perception when an average man wakes up in the morning and all he hears is the details of high-rise structures constructed by the president? What's the restraining members of the executive branch, for example, from publishing their assets and which make it more significant? I mean, I think that will boost the economy and international perception of Liberia anyway.
Okay, so you see, we're in a world of perception, and so without evidence, and we're talking about things that may not be factual. The unfortunate thing is that the people who don't have this information are the ones who are. So let's say the perception on buildings going up. All right. Somebody is saying that because the president built, so the government is going. Let me say this, Rodney. This president has overcommitted. I can use that word. He's overcommitted government resources to the extent that there is nothing real significant for anybody to take. The president declared tuition free. He's paying WAEC. He came in, he took 7-8 million and gave to LEC for debt. His 12 million that was available to do something else, he used it and pay health workers. By the time you add all of those things, you're talking around 26 million US dollars that this government does not have control over to spend anyway. So it took 26 million and locked it in a way what we call non-discretionary spending. You can't do anything about the 2,000 people you're paying because you assigned 12 million there. You can't do anything much about free tuition because you're spending some 3 million now. You can't do anything about WIAC because those students paying WIAC fee. That 2 million multiplied by 6 is a 12 million investment that the previous government had. This president doesn't have that. With all of these commitments, and on top of that, commitment on new military hospital, all of the roads projects, okay, that we did, you take all of that, you're talking an additional 25 million. What so the argument that George Manuel Weah puts up a building, and so it means the country is corrupt, that George Manuel Weah has never had the money to do so, and he started constructing these things. It's unfair for that to be the reason why somebody is saying this corruption. Because when you ask for the evidence on corruption, it is not there. When we talk about governance systems we can have the conversation about improving governance, but you cannot say that the public is financing the president. You take me, for example, I've seen my house. I was making $7,000 as Minister of Finance. At the Minister of Finance back in 2014, 2012 or so, right? When I started working with the Millennium Challenge Corporation. I started my house in 2014. Everybody in, so people tell me, the people can look at your home and tell them, say, they may have started building your house 2014. I went to the African Development Bank.
Don't you think by declaring
assets, we have declared assets. So there's a lot of misconception here. Every government worker, most public officials now, with the latest data, have declared their asset. The public has access to this information through the process. The whole idea of the law does not require that you publish your asset. You can do so voluntarily, but the law doesn't mandate the law. And the question that you have to ask, Rodney, why did the previous government write a law that didn't mandate officials for the assets to be made public? Do we understand why? Why did they do so? Now the question that begs is that, okay, we want this government to change that. Let me tell you something. We live in a very politicized society now, such that there are serious risks for it. I also share that with the fund in our discussions on some of the governance things. You take an assistant minister, an honest person, living on his 3,000 or so money. This person could be a very frugal person, save his money, doesn't spend much. If you allow that person's bank account, say he has $30,000 in his bank, to become public, everybody in his community who come to him and say, my daughter's sick, he say, I don't get money. They tell him, say, you get $30,000 in your bank account, we saw it. The whole society is going to be like that. I don't think that's the intention of asset declaration, because, basically, your entire bank information will be in the public. There's security implications, there's pressure, it's almost like you're walking naked. I don't think that's what the intent is. The intent is that where there is suspicion, you have a process to go to access Samuel Tweah's asset. So anybody who wants to do so, going through that process, you will see my declared asset.
The process is not that simple.
Okay, so what the question we're doing in this IMF program as part of governance is to simplify that process. Not to say anytime a government official declare his asset, put all the data all around for no. It's to say when you want access that, let's simplify the process. Those are the reforms that we're talking about. But you can't say, if somebody who get 10,000, as soon as somebody sees somebody with 10,000 but who went 3 more, the person said, that corrupt man. That man so corrupt, he got 10,000 in his account, and he can't tell me, say he get money from stealing the people money. The whole country is going to be ungovernable like that. I don't think it's fair. And so there's no fear of people declaring assets. Most of the people who've done investment, people, yeah. But if you want to see my asset, go through the process. Go look for, you will see access to it. You'll see how much money you've made. You'll see how much money you've made in the development bank. You'll see the property. You'll see it. There's nothing to hide. But I don't think there's thing about because they're not declaring their asset. So the question is, why now? So you ask the question, this is the political nature. So I don't want to get it because I don't get it political. Why now? Why all of a sudden the whole asset thing should be made public when it was not made public thing? So this is where I'm saying it is this president who is taking the country to what we have always imagined it to be. He can't kick the can down the road again. Any problem that we didn't solve in this country, he has to solve it at this critical time. Because I think the economy we have, where we're only importing things, cannot take us in the future. And this is where we're putting our attention and to ensure that we don't get into this kind of problem again. But we're solving all of these problems. But let's take the facts as they are. You cannot judge the country by because the president pulls up a building and say there's corruption. So we in the government are challenged to counter this and to change public perception of that. This is where the millennium question, the eligibility scorecard. Liberia passed control of corruption this year. Liberia has passed control of corruption in the last 3, 4, 5 years. You know, when I work with the compact, we develop it, we're passing. But the trend is that we need to do more to protect our pass next year. This score this year, we passed 8 out of 10. Last year, we passed 8 out of 10. Last year, we passed inflation, and this year we failed inflation because of where it is. But last year we failed expenditure, and this year we passed expenditure. So there was a swag. I can tell you that next year we're going to pass more than 10 indicators. There were some gains we made that were not reflected this year. For example, the passage of Domestic Violence Act. And there's some technical issues regarding these that we're working on data quality. So changes will be made. We're looking at even fiscal policy. With the IMF program, we believe that definitely our fiscal score is going to be up because we're going to run the fiscal numbers to the level where it is strictly an A or a B plus. So you have to see that reflected, and it's the IMF that is doing the fiscal policy score. We're going to pass that. We're going to pass, I think, primary expenditure. It seems that we could pass that. The data shows that we're working with the Ministry of Education to understand this, because when you look at the health data, it shows that we increase spending in health. But then it also showing that we reduce spending in education. I'm still puzzled by that. How do we increase spending in health and knowing that health and education will be protected? So there's some confusion somewhere that we're working. But we're going to pass primary expenditure next year. So I can confidently say we're passed. So the key indicator we have to focus on is the control of corruption indicator. This brings me to the point where under this program we're working to see we need to set up a special corruption court to move corruption cases, because right now it doesn't have a court. There's a draft bill. I think the vice president must have told me about some draft bill around. We're looking at that as part of the governance reform under this program. We will have to pass. that. We're going to strengthen LACC to give it more powers. We're going to strengthen, for example, the LRA to be able to audit SOEs and independently, and to ensure that we're going to strengthen the anti-money laundering framework. One of the reasons why big banks, Standard & Poor's, some of the big banks can't come to Liberia is because of our score on the anti-money laundering. The president has appointed a new vigorous director who is really on track who has committed himself in 6 months to placing the country on a higher path on the whole anti-money laundering. There will be an amendment to that legislation going to the House. So we're doing a lot of things in the governance. I think we need to communicate, and I'm speaking here, speaking to all my cabinet colleagues. The control of corruption perception has to be battered. Yeah, because it's all figment and imagination of people. I mean, any way you flip it, like for example, me, I'm targeted. Somebody accuses me of taking 25 million. Well, the ordinary man hearing that doesn't know the details, say, oh, the 25, and something that had nothing to do in terms of implementation. At the policy level, it was a policy. The bank had always executed this same policy. The bank had done mopping up in 2014, previous years. They knew how to do it. All right, so this is that responsibility. What happens in the central bank, I don't have anything to do with that. But I get the blame and somebody say, I twerk you with 25, when 25. So the way you check that is to say, okay, but the people didn't even spend 25 million. How are you accusing somebody of 25? That's where you destroy the propaganda. But
since you brought the issue of the 25 million, the IMF review of the economy earlier this year cited the non-performing loans and the falling reserve of the CBO as a major constraint to the bank's operation going forward.
Yeah.
Did the EMT, which you headed, at any point in time, recommend non-sterilized intervention as an intervention program for effective exchange with stability? Given the operation around 25 million, it must be the case the intervention was not sterilized. Do you think this helped cause the fall in the foreign exchange reserve without upsetting the capital intake? And do you think that in particular was it wise, given the 25 million has no empirical effect on altering the direction of the exchange rate?
Okay, you see that's the kind of thing. That question has too many errors in there that you have to break it down for the public. Number one, the only monetary policy framework that the country had before the president announced that policy and say let's infuse that was that you use central bank auctions and monetary instruments to reserve. That's how we've been doing. This country's net reserve was 323 million in 2011. It's 166 million net reserve. So how do you think that reserve drew down? It's through these monetary interventions. That is why we are saying we're not going the reserve route anymore. We are going with interest rate. We'll talk about that more. So the EMT is just like the cabinet. If you took the cabinet and only included all of the people who had something to do with the economy, the EMT is a cabinet level thing. It's just a policy thing where entities take their policy, vet it through, thinking everybody processing ideas, and then a consensus is generated. The EMT does not run any entity. Let's get it clear. There were confusion in some of the reporting that made it seem like the EMT was running the central bank. So the central bank comes to the EMT and say, for the fastest impact on the exchange rate, given this day-to-day, we've never seen this day-to-day thing that was happening between April. It was like, even I go home, my wife is asking me, what's happening to every day the rate? And she's like, what are you doing? We're all under pressure. So every day there's new number. It's not happening now, but it was scary. They came and said, look, there are three options we have. One is we have to do direct mop-up. We can use the commercial banks, but there's going to be no real impact. We've done this before. This is central bank technicians. Using direct mop-up, by mopping directly up as we've done before, and sterilizing. So this is where that sterilizing word coming from. What it says is that when you take the Liberian dollar from outside, all right, and put it down, don't let it go back out. That will have an impact on the exchange rate. And that had an impact. The exchange rate came down from 163 to 151 to 152. No, if you look at the graphs are out there. It showed impact. The impact was there. But you can expect that impact to stay because this exchange rate we have in this country have been rising since 2005 from 50 to 210. So we have a policy regime where we can never stop the rise. The only thing we have been doing, because we have more Liberian dollar in the economy, is to hold it down. So it has always been increasing from 50 to 60 to 70 to 80 to 90. That is the history of the exchange rate in Liberia. The increase then was lower because you had huge amount of Liberian dollar in the economy. You don't have that again, so the increases this time will be higher. But the only instrument you have is instrument mop-up. So and using reserve, and that is what happened. They sterilized the money, and then when pressure came during Christmas time, okay, so you sterilize the money. There's no Liberian dollar. You got 2.3 billion sitting down. The bank saying they don't have Liberian dollar. You have a choice to say, okay, let the bank not have Liberian dollar. Let's sit down and let the 2 billion sit in the central bank. We're okay. That's tightening. Technically, that's tightening, but that means that there will be pressure from the consumers. That also adds to the confidence issue that people can't get the money. So, about 1 billion went back into the economy, but that was after the impact was already there. So, I mean, these are facts that the public need to know. And when the question is asked, let the question be asked in a way that is factual so that people can make sense of it. But sometimes it's just all the politics that gets into the way and that. This policy now, this new central bank policy, is not going to do that kind of monetary intervention.
But shouldn't the map of money funds should have been sterilized for a year, but then they end up being dumped back in the economy? How? I mean,
I just explained because you have the choice. Like we're going to this Christmas season now. Mm-hmm. The demand for Liberian dollar in the Christmas season is going to be around $6 to $7 billion. If you had a sterilized amount in the bank setting and people are looking for Liberian dollar, it doesn't make sense because you have already achieved the goal. So it is not sustainable. You just the challenge is Liberian dollar is just out. And the other question is Liberian dollar has always been out. 85% of this Liberian dollar circulation was out 2011 when you look at the data. The difference is that just the exposure that US dollar is not here again.
I think the problem a lot of people are having is that during the last government, the old bills were supposed to be destroyed. But now, as I speak to you, we have 3 different currencies on the market. We have the old bill, the new bill, and the US dollar. Also, we're not seeing that last. We're not seeing the bill in circulation. Where's the money? I mean,
okay, look,
that's the problem people are concerned about.
Okay, let me say, let this conversation not just be about central bank, because I'm not the governor of the central bank. Right. When I talk for the government as a whole, sometimes people take me and put me into the chair in the public's imagination since I am explaining, and I've been accused. People have told me, when you ask any question on central bank, don't talk. I said it's not fair. because somebody out there who is deviously trying to demonize me. So when the question on central bank is asked that I know the answer, or I should be afraid to say something so the public can say Samuel Tweah said this. This is the kind of polarization that we're in right now. But it's unfair for the public discourse. My talking about policy issues related to the central bank does not mean definitely not me running the central bank. But sometimes it comes across to the extent that the president, let me say this, the president is thinking about moving the central bank from the economic management team. Technically, the president has told me that it looks like you will have to move because for the kind of independence you want the bank to be now, you're not borrowing from the bank. Maybe if you continue to have the bank on the EMT, people think that the EMT is running the bank. So let the bank be separate. And they have views. I even shared that view with the Treasury Department in the United States. And they said, well, really? Do you want to do that? I said, well, look, we want to do that because we want to strengthen confidence in the independence of the central bank. Like the central bank, the Ministry of Finance and the central bank have liquidity meetings we can rationalize. But the idea of them coming to the EMT in this highly politicized environment, I think, so I mean, I'm still waiting. The president has a final decision on that, but I'm just showing you his thinking on this question. And I think we're still looking at it. This to tell you that we just want transparency. Whatever's happening, the new central bank, on the new governor, and the new president is really working hard to get a new governor. You will not be the central bank that we know. Look, some of the people in the central bank are my friends. We went to school together, some of the best minds in Liberia. We've all trusted the central bank had the capacity. Nobody is questioning the central bank in the last 10 years. And all of a sudden we take office, then that same central bank then comes under violent scrutiny in a way that it's never been. And it's as if we just found the bank in 2018. It's not being like that. The bank has had some highly qualified people, but I think we want to take those qualified people, take new standards, new safeguards, to give the Liberian people the confidence that their central bank, under this new program, is not going to be that, and the monetary policy measures are going to be stronger, and all of that. So at some point in time, maybe the governor of the central bank and the people will come here and they'll explain all their things. I don't want to spend my time just talking about the central bank.
Let's move away from the central bank a little bit. Let's come and talk about, the payment of salaries.
There you go.
Today, we're in November already, and people are taking pay for like September. And now you've returned from the IMF, and you've told us that we're on the path to reform. What is the assurance you can give to the Liberian people that, Christmas is coming, that people will get paid?
Look, if you read the release from the workers' union, it says that by end, we're working aggressively to regularize salary. And so there is nothing the president is preoccupied with more than ensuring that salary is current in the Christmas season. We are working assiduously over time, doing everything, whether on the revenue side, on the fiscal side, on holding the expenditure line on goods and services, so that, as a matter of fact right now, the rule used to be, we passed the rule that any money that's going in the consolidated account, the government revenue account, 60% should be kept for salary. We have revised that rule to say 80% should be kept for salary. So that means if $1 go into the government account, 80 cents is for salary, 20 cents you can do something with it, but salary is prioritized. And we'll continue that 80-20 rule for a very long time and to ensure salary. But there is nothing more important to the government right now than regularizing salary. Our people have been hit hard for a long time, and I think we all are working to turn this situation around. Nobody is happy when government pay is delayed, but the perception that government pay is delayed because somebody is taking the money, it's just unfair to the government and to the country. People deserve the truth.
So what is it? Why has government pay been delayed? Is it because of the harmonization?
No, harmonization. No, it's the challenging economy. Okay, when the economy is challenged, you face some of these shocks. So we have faced some shocks on the fiscal and the revenue side. For example, last year we had planned to get a certain amount of budget support from but that didn't come true. So some of that dealt a big blow to the fiscal situation, which is why we say this IMF program is important, because the experts were saying, look, one of the reasons why you didn't get the budget support is because you're not in the IMF program. So you need to assure that we're doing everything possible to give greatest confidence to all of our development partners. And the president had a wonderful meeting with all of the partners the other day. I have never seen the partners so enthusiastic about Liberia. These people want the best for Liberia. They are committed to working with this government to turning everything around. It's all hands on deck. You have to be in that meeting to see them talk about making proposals about the economy, the agriculture, their own spending, everything coming together. There is no doubt this thing will be turned around very soon. And I'm just appealing to the Liberian people to be patient, to work with the president, to trust the president that he is in their interest. This man thinks every day he puts us under extreme pressure. All right, and we're doing so. We're doing so. We will deliver for these people. Let the politics will be the politics. Let the politics not get in the way of the reforms that we are doing. We are asking everybody. We just ended a national economic dialogue. One of the aims of that dialogue was inclusion. As a result of that, the president has set up some committees. We are preparing, along with UNDP, to ensure that a secretary, and the president has agreed. I've asked the president, and he said, y'all can bring some people on the secretary, some of the people who are not in government, who are on the technical people, put them together, work with your partners, and see how they can support, backstab government. All right? And we're working on all of that coming out of the National Economic Dialogue. So some of the recommendations that came, all of the things that people are saying, we're putting all of these things together. We want to bring Liberians together to solve the problem. When we go into elections 4 years from now, or whatever time, we'll play the politics. But let's work together to solve the difficult problems that we've not been able to solve for a very long time. I'm confident. The international community is now confident. I had meetings with senior people at the World Bank, all right? Vice President Hafez. He assured me, so we are committed to helping Liberia, Mr. Minister. Just stay the reform course. You're on the right path. The IMF program, we've read it, that we've seen the commitment of the fund to help you. The World Bank is committed to helping you. Development partners, the EU people met me there. They pledged that. As a matter of fact, the EU budget support is coming through now because of the IMF release that came out, and then they're preparing the other one. All of these things are coming together. It's just a little patience, a little time, and we set the fundamentals right.
Little patient, little time. How much time is little patient?
Maybe more patience. But we're headed in the right direction. No question. On the issues you're raising, the government salary remains a priority, and we're holding the line on delivering that. That means that we're holding the line on spending in other ways that will protect the payment of salary.
So you're gonna show the Liberian people.
We've already done so. We've already done that in the release.
They're gonna get their pay for Christmas, right?
We're sure that Liberian people, we're working very hard to deliver for them. We're sure they can trust that we're working very hard.
Mr. Minister, I think for years now, not just this government, past government also, there's been too much emphasis on the budget, focusing too much on salary payments.
Let's go.
There's little effort in terms of investing in what I think is the most crucial and most relevant area that we're not being addressed. The issue of agriculture.
There you go.
There's no investment in agriculture. The budget for agriculture, I think last time I checked, was under 5 million. And how do you improve an economy when you don't have time for the sector? That's pretty much what it is. Government have come and go, but there's no investment in agriculture. We see what agriculture can do to people, but we're not doing it in Liberia. Why is it this?
Look, it's probably the most critical question of this whole program. This question is the best question of the discussion. The reason we are doing all of this is because we're trying to find money to invest in agriculture. I agree with you. There's been a focus on salary to the exclusion. So when you read the language that we're putting out, it says that salary has crowded out. I mean, there's no money for even health. Right now we need about $7 million more to correct our drug problem. We don't have that. We need money to put 8,000 teachers in the classroom. We don't have that. This government is trying to solve all of that. So the question is, why? Why have we not been able to use the budget to close the teacher gap? I can understand when you say we don't have a quality teacher, fine. I prefer a teacher who not quality standing in front of a student than no teacher. That student will be thinking somewhere will work through. So we need to close the teacher gap. We need to solve the drug problem. The only way you do so is to restructure the budget. One of the restructuring is what we have delivered on the wage side. There are other restructurings that are possible, but when you have that kind of problem, you can't just say, okay, let's start from. Somebody advised me, say, the way I need to do in that country, take a plain sheet of paper and start drawing the budget over. Academically, you can theoretically do that. Practically, you can't do it because there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of the three branches of government. There's a lot of people there. It's not one man making that decision. It's a 1 and 3, the executive, you have the judiciary. It's a very difficult budget, But the way you solve it is deliver wins gradually. I have never seen the commitment since I've been in this country, since I returned from the United States and being observing Liberian politics. This national legislature is about the greatest. They have shown their commitment to instituting reforms. And let's tell them thank you. Because for a long time, we don't, you see, in Liberia, we don't like to praise. And I told somebody, I said, I'll praise them. They say, oh, you praise them? I said, yes. Because we don't like to praise one another because we want to bring one another down. The national legislature we have today is the reason why, along with the president we have today, that we are able to answer this question. In this budget, we have 1.7 million for agriculture on the PSIP side. That's small. We will protect that investment. Next year, we want to carry it to 4 million, but we're going to do so with the reforms. So we need to find this money. There are 4 places you get money for agriculture. The one you raise, which is the budget. If we don't have the money, we'll not be able to invest in agriculture. So that's one of the reasons why the government has been weak on the agriculture side. The other place you get money is from the development partners. So the development partners have projects, our concessional loans, we have World Bank projects that are working on. We are working with our partners to be able to improve the delivery of those projects. And one of the things that coming out of the annual meeting from the World Bank is that the World Bank believes that we need a bigger focus on agriculture from the bank side. So they are working with us to kind of rethink the whole agriculture model. The other place you get money from is from banks. Banks are sitting on cash in the vault that is not going to agriculture. Why is that? We're talking with the banks on de-risking. So they're saying they're afraid because when they invest in the government guarantee now good, for example, 65 million. We issue a bond to them of 65 million. We are in the process of discounting that money so that money can come to the FXing bank, to the banking sector. We are working with them so that when that money comes, they can take some of that and say, look, put it back in agriculture. We guarantee it again because we are the same one who guarantee you and paying you, so we want you back. So it's that. And then domestic. I've been in a small chat room with people like Musa Bility. Bility says he wants to find 10 million to put into agriculture. This is the spirit. Whether you're from Liberty Party, you're from ANC, you're from CDC, we want people to invest in agriculture. This is the way we are going now. So you'll find out when the president announces a new agriculture minister, all these frameworks is what that minister is taking to then move. This is not going to be just like a government thing. It's a national thing. Everybody should go out and plant. Everybody should go out and plant. I live in Abidjan. The food is just too much. We can do the same thing here. We can do it. And we will do it in a year or two. You will see that difference.
Speaking of food and investment agriculture, one area that I think would help the farmers is the issue of roads.
Yeah.
When this government came to office, one of the first things they said was they're going to invest in roads.
That's correct.
And the 2 biggest issues off the bat was Eton and Iboma. Where are we now?
Well, no, definitely we don't have those. We don't have those. Somebody say, okay, I put somebody say, I want to discuss what you think are the policy failures of this government. Because there are a lot of negative the government getting. Then they say Eton. I said, Eton is not a policy. Eton was an intention to get a loan faster enough, on terms that are not costly to the country. In fact, people look at me and say, Eton loan is too good to be true, because it's a private person doing a concessional loan. How is that possible? The country is not cheated at all by Eton. So Eton comes through, there is a net benefit to Liberia. How is that a bad thing? The question then comes and goes, you didn't do the normal procurement, the governance breach. We can argue that. But that's not a bad thing to say if Eton had materialized for the country to get a road sooner. So imagine if Eton had materialized and we probably way off in terms of all those roads. Okay, we get that. So that cannot be, you cannot hold the country and say Eton, Iboma. Those things are not on the board. Iboma, those things now. So let's talk about a policy that the government made that you say is wrong and that it needs to be changed. You can't get that. The other thing is that corruption. Where's the corruption? It was, we see building here and there. These are all perceptions, so we need to go and change all of those.
But do you have any regrets? Because when this Eton thing came out, there were a lot of public outcry. People defended it, some people were in favor of it. But there were people who were just saying, take time, do due diligence and stuff. Do you have any regrets not listening to the public at the time when this thing came out?
Look, when we got into government, my brother was, you have to move. You have a president who is practical. You have a president who wants results, And I saw the pace of change in the last 12 years. I too was not satisfied with that pace. I mean, I can even tell some of our development partners that look at the hydro, how long it took us. Look at LEC. You know we are about to have a $100 million conference at LEC. This is 12 years after the last government, 2 years in this government. So it just means that the pace, the way things are changing, and the president made that clear that he doesn't want that kind of slow pace. So one of the, the key thing is that looking at the sole sourcing part and getting the price right. A procurement contract is intended to, yes, help minimize corruption, do all of that, but the real thing is that real price, the true price should be guarded. It's quite possible that you can deliver true price through a competitive process, and you can also deliver it through a sole sourcing process. At the bottom line is what the country is spending. Our costs are the cost of perception. So that's the thing we're paying for. Oh, we thought that you're trying to do something at Eton, that's why it was too good to be true, but there's all stuff that's not fact. Going forward, we are tightening our procurement standards, and that's part of the thing. You're going to see that there is going to be a delay. I just met the procurement director. There's going to be a reduction in anything that is restricted bidding on sole sourcing. As Minister of Finance, I've said I don't want to sign it. And I've had that communication with her. I've had that communication with the Minister of State that it is these governance things that are hurting us, whereas nothing in corruption is happening, but because somebody does a single source, somebody out there, nationally, internationally, holds the view that corruption was involved. Whereas there's no corruption, but if you had done a competitive tender and corruption is involved, they don't hold that perception. You see the confusion? So you do a competitive tender and still corruption involved, but nobody's talking about the corruption. You do a single source and no corruption involved, they are talking about it because of the method you're using. So we are being hit on these method issues. We are working to correct those, but it's a method issue. The new procurement director is vigilant and strong, and she's in her own right, she's doing excellent, and we're working with the government to ensure we turn these. So it is these things that we improve the public perception of how the world sees us. Knowing that Minister of Finance, I mean, can it be the tension that in the country fiscally, the resources we're finding, there's no money there to do anything.